everybody, how's it going? Ben Gothard here with another Project Egg interview. Today we're talking to Sohan Gokarn from Mumbai. How you doing, Sohan?
Awesome. Really good, mate. Really, really good. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much for jumping on the interview. I really do appreciate it. So,
Thanks for having me, mate.
oh, absolutely. Absolutely, man. My pleasure. So, let's jump right in. First question for you is, what is your story?
Right. Okay. Thanks for asking. I'll try and sum it up really nicely, but I'm gonna be mindful of time for you as well and for the listeners. But my story goes all the way back where I started off in Kuwait. So I was born in Mumbai. I was raised in Kuwait, and right now I'm in Australia. I'm in Sydney, Australia. I've been living here for a year. But I was born in Mumbai, raised in Kuwait, and I was there for the first 12 years of my life, Ben, and it was pretty cool. I'll tell you that. My first 12 years was really cool. A lot of people say the first 25 years sets the foundation. I reckon my first 12 years really set the foundation for the following 12 years, which has led to an amazing legacy that I've left, and I'm also continuing to leave. I was there during the war, and we went back to India during the war just before the Gulf War took place. But I was there for the first 45 days of when Iraq invaded Kuwait. And it was fascinating because I was still sleeping in this, I could hear these sounds in the background. And they sounded like fireworks. You know, when you're in your light sleep in the morning and you can hear sounds around you? I heard that and I heard fireworks, but I wasn't sure what they were. And my mom wakes me up and says, "Son, get up, there's a war." And I was like, "What do you mean, war? I'm living, dude. I don't even understand it." And I got up and I looked outside the window, and as I looked outside the window, say about 100 meters of a distance between my apartment building and the other one. There's this gap between two apartment buildings, and I could see a man run past, and there were like 3 or 4 soldiers trying to gun him down, chasing him. And I couldn't understand what was going on, but Mom said it was a war, so I kind of questioned that, and I asked her what was going on, and she told me what was happening, and Kuwait got attacked, and Iraq has taken over, and we don't know what we're going to do, but let's just get up now and get ready. And I said, "Am I going to school?" That was my first question. She said no, and I said yes, because I didn't have to go to school, which is cool. No, I'm kidding. I don't know what to expect at that time, but it was interesting because we went through ups and downs in those 45 days. And there were days where there would be this complete calm with nothing happening around us. And then there would be days where this calm would just all of a sudden, burst out into this massive explosion where I've seen my mom literally fly off the couch with the vibration from outside. It was crazy impact. And so we went through that for 45 days. And, I could see my family trying to strategize and my parents getting together with the neighbors, strategizing, and then having to drop the strategy of having to evacuate and then go back because someone would come saying, "Hey, we can't go because that road's blocked and, the cars have been carjacked and families have been taken away, so we can't go on that route." And this kept happening on and off. And this is, when I look back at it now, and we'll talk more about it perhaps in the interview, but it's like a metaphor of life. As entrepreneurs, we keep going and we have a strategy, we want to apply it, and someone comes in our way and says, "Hey, you can't do this because X, Y, Z failed." And then we just drop the idea without even having to figure out whether there's another way, and we lose hope. And I guess one of the things that my parents did was they didn't lose hope because they always wanted to find a way. My dad persisted, and I guess that's where I get it from. But he persisted because he met this stranger on the plane. Now, this is really interesting because this perhaps had a lot of impact on my life for where I am today. He trusted a stranger in the plane, Ben. He said to him, "I don't know where I'm going to Kuwait." They were coming back from Iraq to Kuwait. They were sitting next to each other on the plane, and the guy says to my dad, "I'm an engineer. I've been pulled out of my house to go and do this job. I don't know where I'm going. It's an undisclosed location, but I'm happy to help you because, I've got political connections where I can maybe help you out. I don't know, but we'll figure out. But I don't know where I'm going, so I don't know what to tell you. Give me your number and I'll get in touch." And my dad could have easily freaked out because he didn't know what to expect. Nah, he gives him his number. And a few weeks later, the guy gives him a call, or a few days later, I can't remember exactly, but he gets a call. My dad gets a call. They meet up. The plan gets executed. And we end up leaving Kuwait, driving through the border, through no man's land overnight. And we got to Iraq in the morning. Excuse me. And this is crazy because that's a big risk. And you can imagine, as my dad had his wife, my mom. he had his daughter, and he had to look after them, and I was there as well. And it's dangerous because you'd hear stories of cars being carjacked, women taken away and raped, and can you imagine what that man would have gone through to create and just protect the family and get across the border, figuratively speaking. And we did that, and then we finally got to Baghdad, Iraq, and then we saw the family. They welcomed us. They put us up at a hotel. They kept strategizing, and they found another way for us to get out of there and get to Jordan, excuse me, again, by road. And then from Jordan, it's amazing. One of Dad's old schoolmates, who my dad couldn't recognize, but he recognized my dad from a distance across the check-in. And he called us and he said, look, let's see what I can do to get you out. And about a few hours we were out. But otherwise, I remember as a kid that Jordan Airport, Ben, was like families, a sea, an ocean of families with kids sleeping and piling on top of one another like little puppies in the cold in the winter, trying to get warm, just trying to find a way to get out of that country back to their own countries and families. And we were very fortunate that we managed to get that. And so we had to start fresh with 20 kilos of clothes. That's all we had. No electronics. As a kid, I had my skateboard, I had my buggy remote control. All that was gone. I had my transformer, all these things had to just literally be thrown out the window as a kid. And I felt it was taken away from me, but I felt I got a second chance to live. I didn't realize it at the age of 12, but I think I picked it up as I went along. And I said, you know what? It's times were tough then, but we made it, and we had a second chance to make things work. And we did. And so I went back and I started fresh, and I graduated eventually, and started working in the space of learning and development. And I was always an entrepreneur, I reckon, because I liked the idea of hustling. I think I was a big, big hustler. So, my first opportunity was a network marketing opportunity back in 97, 98. And I enjoyed it thoroughly. I literally did. I met so many people. I loved the idea. That was the first time I got a chance to influence and stand in front of a crowd and help people and entertain as well, be an MC. And so public speaking became an easy opportunity for me to get into. And then before I knew it, I was a trainer, and I built a career in that. And then I became a coach. So I did a lot of coaching for corporate clients. And then I picked the intention of wanting to help individuals, because within the business and companies, individuals' voices were not being heard. And so I was that guy who would be the angel, guardian angel, if you may, get in there, help them, listen to them, and help make transformations. And I moved to New Zealand 10 years ago, lived there, had a great time, and then finally moved to Australia, which was a 16-year dream of having to move. So I finally persisted and made that dream come true last year.
Wow, man, that is awesome. That is an awesome story. And the fact that you went through so much, and you still have such a positive attitude. I mean, that's powerful. So, I kind of want to dig a little bit deeper into your past, because I think there's a lot that we can learn from it. So you said that the first 12 years of your life were really cool. Living in Kuwait. What parts of your childhood do you think stayed with you as you moved forward and as you developed into an entrepreneur? What parts of your childhood really have come into play now?
I think my bullishness as a kid, I was a real hard, stubborn-headed kid. I wanted my way. I'd always have to have my way. Excuse me. My sisters would vouch. I'm the youngest in the family. And my sisters would definitely vouch for that. They knew it when, I was loud, and I'd scream on top of my lungs as a kid if I wanted to have my thing. But I wasn't spoiled. That's the beauty of it. My dad would always make sure that I wouldn't just get what I wanted. I had to really earn it. And at first I used to think maybe screaming was a way to earn it, as most kids do. But I soon realized he wasn't giving in. All my mom was. So I said, okay, got to find different ways. So I think, it was my stubborn attitude that built into persistence. It refined into a quality of persistence, which is really great, and that's really helped me and is still helping me. And I feel entrepreneurs really, really need to build that resilience. That's the other one that I built along with persistence. I'm extremely resilient. As a kid, I had a lot of different changes. I went to different schools. I met new friends, different variety. There was variety constantly, and I think variety, which is something that is a basic need for us, that we need as human beings. It builds resilience as long as you don't resist it, right? And I built a lot of resilience, I guess, because I never resisted it. I was fluid. I would adapt because I started enjoying the variety. And I feel adaptability was another quality the third quality that I picked in and I brought into my entrepreneurial life. I felt I was, as a kid, I saw mom and dad very social, and my mom she was a theater actress, small time, just in the community, and have fun with that as a social thing, and I loved it because theatrical. A person who has a theatrical nature naturally has the ability to just take on personalities and adapt to them and also learn them and be able to manage them or understand them a little bit. And I think I had that in me. My sisters have it too, and that's why we're blessed as, we grow up as kids being social. We had no dramas. We'd never hide behind our mums or dads and be shy in a crowd. We'd never had that problem. We'd always come in when we had guests, put my hand forward and shake their hand or just sit next to them on the couch and have a chat with them. No dramas. And I think that, till date, has been a big part of me. I walk into an event, I have no qualms in shaking a hand and saying hello and big smile with someone I don't know at all. And 9 out of 10 times, people will say to me, "Did you know the person?" And I'll be like, "No." And they go, "Man, you sounded like you guys knew each other for a while." And I said, it's not one-sided, it's two-sided, because the other person also feels like they knew me, and and so it gives that impression. And we, as kids, I think that was a big one I had. So being sociable was a big quality for me that I needed to bring into entrepreneurialism. That's what I can think of at the top of my head. I mean, there's so many more, but essentially, yeah, persistence was a big one for sure, and flexibility or adaptability.
Absolutely. So I want to talk about something that you said, because I really think it is important for entrepreneurs, right? You said that both persistence and adaptability, persistence and resilience and adaptability are needed, right? And they're both important. But at some point, it seems kind of paradoxical, right? Because you have to be resilient in who you are and letting yourself shine through, but you have to also be able to adapt. And you have to be able to be comfortable in uncomfortable situations. So could you maybe talk a little bit about or give advice to those who don't have that balance, how to achieve that?
It's quite interesting. You mentioned that as well, because it's true. It's when you look at resilience that causes someone to want to be, having to face circumstances and face difficulties or trials and tribulations. There's one thing that I've learned for a fact. I know this, and this is what everyone's got to understand. When you have a lot of trouble, a lot of trouble coming your way, and you know what? Usually for an entrepreneur, it has to do with their personal lives. It's got nothing to do with the business world, nothing at all. It's because the entrepreneur uses everything who they are as their values, and they live their values, which comes from within at home. Man who goes home is the same man who goes to work, or woman who goes home is the same woman who goes to work. Either way, but the point is that value system is developed, and part of that is this resilience and this adaptability. The promise is this, that every single time I've been uncomfortable, every single time I've been uncomfortable and pulled out of my comfort zone. And what does that mean? I've never been, when I've been uncomfortable, it's usually because things are not going the way I want them to go. Classic situation. Things are not going the way I want them to go. I've got to freak out. I'm going to do flight or fight. And that's typically what most of us used to do. I used to do it too. Either black and white. And we as human beings tend to go that way. I learned that you got to learn how to have a middle ground. Because there is no, you cannot have, and that's what most of us tend to do. We human beings tend to go into this phase because we're programmed like that. I was too, to either fight or to flight. It's either black or it's white. But sometimes you have to understand that there is a need for you to be in the gray zone, because that gray zone, it's not about being indecisive, but it's that gray zone that will actually give you a promise, which is when you're uncomfortable, you're going to get uncomfortable because you're going to get more comfortable later. Things are going to get better, but they're not going to go the way you necessarily thought they're going to go, because that's not how the universe will work, or God or the divine or whoever else, whatever we believe in. It's that part, but knowing that promise allows us to then get into that, okay, I'll push through this, and I'm happy to adapt myself to the situation, and then I'll just take the chi or the energy, we'll just let it come. And that's what typically happens. Like if you just put your hands together, Ben, And if you try it with me, and the listeners, you guys can do this if you wanted to, but this is a quick exercise. And I've done this sometimes just sitting in the bedroom myself, trying to get myself back and centered, right? But just having to put your hands like this sometimes to realize going, right, okay, I'm going to use my right hand now to push the left hand down and let the left hand see what it does on its own, right? Now try doing that. Now you notice at some point you're going to stop. There is a resistance. Why aren't you going all the way down? It's just because there is resistance. That's because your body's formed a resistance, because your body's connected to your mind, and it's sending messages to the mind going, gotta resist. This muscle ain't gonna move. Let's protect. There's a protection mechanism in our system that says, oh, if you push a little low, you're gonna, your body's trying to say you're gonna end up getting a muscle pull or something's gonna happen. You'll snap the bone. Don't be too, you gotta protect yourself. It's a protective mechanism. If you're present to that, you'll typically have no problem pushing yourself as far as you can go. Because then that allows you to create fluidity, which is adaptability. And that's how, I've always done it, Ben. I've always now, when I say always, I'm talking about from the time I had this realization. And this realization was not too long ago. We were only talking about a decade ago. And, it helped me to start looking at blending and just going with the flow, not worrying about the things that are not going my way because they're not going my way. It'll happen. It's a process that we have to trust. And saying that's easy, but why don't we do it? It's because of our programming. So I think the biggest thing I'll say to every single person listening to us right now is be a master of or a student of mastering why we do what we do or why we don't do what we do. If we just take that keen interest there on our journey of an entrepreneur, I promise you life will be different. Just like we do for our customers, right? We're always trying to figure out why do they do what they do to create a problem that they can't find an answer to, which is why I exist as an entrepreneur to create a solution for them. If you applied the same investment into yourself every single moment and just say, why did I do what I did? And if you just sit there and you learn it, I think you as an entrepreneur can keep on building yourself even more. And that just reflects in your actions. It shows in your behavioral patterns, and your customers see it in the solutions you give them.
Absolutely. And there's a quote out there, and I think it applies nicely to what we're talking about, that as entrepreneurs, we have to be rigid in the problem that we're trying to solve, but flexible in how we go about solving that problem, right? And so I think that what you said was really profound, and that was a great exercise, by the way. I feel a little loosened up now.
Thank you.
glad you brought that up. But it really is an important point to bring up, that as entrepreneurs, we got to roll with the punches sometimes. We got to stand our ground sometimes, and it's important to be able to recognize when the right time is for that specific response. Now, you also mentioned the third, or if we count resilience, the fourth thing that you talked about was being sociable. And you said you got that from your mom. Could you talk about how important it is to develop your social skills, and even if you are an introvert, to bring yourself out of your own shell as an entrepreneur?
Oh my God, it's probably right up there. I'll tell you that. It's so important. I don't even know where to start with that. The ability to just be sociable, Ben, just gives it opens up a whole big door of opportunities. It creates a massive opportunity of meeting people that we want to attract in our lives. It's so fascinating. And for somebody who is not an extrovert, and I feel extrovert and introvert as we always have learned them, there's such labels that we almost started believing them. The reality is we as human beings really are just who we are. And if we just go back, if we simply go back to who we were as kids when we were babies, we had no clue we were going to be an introvert. I didn't come out with a stamp on my forehead saying I'm an extrovert. I had no clue. What I did know, though, now is I have the ability to go back to remembering the fact that I didn't have any labels on me. I am who I am because I'm conditioned through my social surroundings. And so people who are tagged or labeled as introverts, I apologize for calling you guys introverts, but I certainly know that that's a conditioning that you guys have chosen to stick to for the last so many years of your life. You've made that choice. And if you want to stick to that, that's okay. But there's also an opportunity while you stick to that for you to choose and make decisions of stepping into, whatever makes or the label or whatever defines the label of an extrovert or a sociable person. And it's a choice, and you can switch it on and switch it off if you just practice enough. It's like going to the gym and building up a muscle. You don't build it up in one day. You got to keep practicing it. So if that means I'm an introvert and I don't like talking to a lot of people, and I see that here in Australia and New Zealand, right? Ben, in Australia and New Zealand, we have something known as, and any Kiwis or any Aussies listening to this conversation right now, you guys will agree with me, we have something called a tall poppy syndrome. Tall poppy syndrome is basically these flowers. I was talking to a few mates of mine yesterday from Jersey and Frisco. They were asking, what the hell is this tall poppy thing? And I said, okay, so you know the flower, the poppy. And he goes, yeah. I said, all right. So typically the concept is when a poppy pops out of the rest of them, the head's chopped off. Now take that metaphor and apply it into our lives. That's exactly what we've been living with, for years. New Zealand and Australia, if anyone tries to talk big or speak for themselves and say speak about their achievements or speak about the money, and you're not supposed to talk about that, Ben. Keep it down. Keep it low. Keep your success. It's all right. I know you're good, but you don't have to talk about it. Just tone it down. Don't be over the top. That's why when I would speak up, it would rock the boat. It will rock people's boats in New Zealand. And it would rock people's boats here as well in Australia. But that's because we would choose to just want to be comfortable in not speaking up because we got conditioned with that. But here's the thing. You can stay like that, no problemo, but you can choose to want to create, just like you choose to wake up in the morning and brush your teeth with a conscious attitude, you can do the same thing when you're in a certain environment. So when you go to, for example, you're getting into a networking event, choose to switch into that mode and get there. And I know people that I'm sure you knew too. There are quite a few, introverts who typically will seem like they're very sociable, but the reality is they're very introverted. They just switched on that hat, excuse me, for being sociable, but then they went back to their original self later on. And I can just say that it's, take it as an assurance that when you switch into that mode of being sociable, it doesn't mean you're inauthentic, because your values still can be the same. Your intentions are nothing but simply to be able to connect with someone else because you're there to serve someone else. It's not about you, it's about them, right? That's what I always tell myself. And so when I keep that in mind, it makes it easy. Now, how do you build these sociable skills? Pretty simple. Even if you're lazy ass and you want to sit at home, jump on Google, you'll figure it out. But if not, go to a Toastmasters. That's a great starting point. They're not expensive. They're easy. You can go as many times as you want to the closest chapter in your area or the club in your area, and you can attend them as many times as you want before you personally feel comfortable with that club and the people around there, because they ain't going to charge you money for it and they won't force you. But then when they do, and when you do decide, when they do invite you and you do want to go in there, you can learn so much because they teach you about leadership skills and they teach you about communication skills. You get a mentor that guides you and shows you how to be a better communicator, and it helps you to be a little more comfortable getting out of your skin. So you're like now developing that muscle. So this is a great starting point for a lot of people that I tell. Go to a Toastmasters. Get some learning there. You don't necessarily have to be a public speaker, but just learn that. And that will give you an opportunity to do other things, and be able to find avenues and give you encouragement. But it starts with that courage of choosing to switch on that mode and then switch off whenever you want. So you can still be okay with it.
Absolutely. And I think that's really profound that you said that it's a choice. We have a choice of what we label ourselves as and, how we're actually going to be, right? Because if we're going to constantly say to ourselves, I'm an introvert, I can't talk to people, I have anxiety, then that's how it's going to be, right? That it's a self-fulfilling label, right? But yep. If you think to yourself, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to talk to every single person at this party, then you can go do it. Or I'm going to go to this conference and I'm going to hand out my business card to 500 people and I'm going to learn all of their first names, right? You can do that. It's about taking the initiative, like you said, making that choice and switching it on, right? Switching it from introvert to extrovert. And like you said, it's not that you're not a genuine person, right? You're just opening up a little bit more, right? You're choosing to share a little bit more about who you are. So I think that was a really good point. Now, I want to move on to one other thing that you said about hope. Now, you said that your dad never gave up hope when y'all were trying to cross the border, and it seemed like it impacted you in some way. Could you talk about the importance of hope, both in your life and why hope is so important to entrepreneurs moving forward?
I feel, Ben, if anyone's gone through, if anyone's been through tough times, and those tough times are all relative, in all circumstances for every single person. Heck, tough times could be for someone who's sitting in traffic and cursing the traffic for 2 hours when they could just get there in 8 minutes. But hope is such a big word that I feel a lot of people rely on, that tends to almost become a crutch for them. And I feel what my dad did was, because I'll speak from that experience, he didn't use it as a crutch. He used it as fuel to his vision. He had a very clear vision, and he was extremely determined that he was going to get the outcome he wanted no matter what. The outcome was really simple. He wanted to get his family with the rest of the family in a safe zone. That's all he knew. Okay? And he didn't sit to get caught up in the details of how that was going to work. So while he did that, he trusted his gut, and he went with his instinct, which is what I'm referring to as his hope being his fuel versus being his crutch. And a lot of people in the entrepreneurial space, when they use, how you find out if hope is a crutch for you or is fuel for you? If that hope is sitting there and it's freaking you out and it's stopping you for whatever reason, whatever message you're telling yourself to not take action, then that's where you're using hope as a crutch, because you're going one day aisle. We've heard motivational speakers talk about it, the one day aisle. That a lot of entrepreneurs suffer from that because of the fact that they use hope as a crutch. They go, I hope I manage to meet someone. But the moment they take that hope word, which is so important to have, and use that as a fuel to their determination, what does that mean? It just makes them feel really excited. It's a feeling like no one can actually program into you. It's a feeling that naturally comes from within, where you feel from your gut, you actually feel excited like crazy, but you feel a little nervous. A little nervous. Not too much, just a little nervous. Just you're slightly afraid. If you're freaking out more than normal, or you're freaking out more than you get excited, maybe that's a better way to put it, then you're using hope as a crutch. But if you're getting more excited and slightly afraid, dude, you got that nailed. Now you got hope as a fuel, because now you're going to go for it, because that gut helps you to go, you know what? I know it's going to happen. Expectancy. We live in a state of expectancy by doing that. So when someone says, how do you get into a state of expectancy? This is how you do it. When you create a feeling of excitement, which is more than feeling afraid or nervous, which is okay to have, but once you have the proportion going, hope becomes a very, very, it becomes an integral part of our journey as entrepreneurs, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's what happened with Dad, Ben. I mean, like, my dad would do exactly that. He had that integral sense of expectancy. He just knew when he met that guy, he knew it was going to fall into place. He just felt it. He felt good. And and I heard someone, I heard Richard Branson about 2 years ago. I read it somewhere, and he spoke about, he understands, he knows who to do business with in 5 to 6 seconds of shaking their hand. How does he do that? And his strike rate was really good, because what he did was, he said, was really simple. When he shakes someone's hand, those 5-6 seconds that he's actually connecting with them with their eye contact, he's not on the surface like most people are, but he's actually present, and he feels it in his gut. And that gut is his hope of expectancy that things are going to work out. And when he gets really excited, it all happens literally in those few seconds. But the moment he gets this gush of excitement, more than feeling hesitant, he knows he's got the right person to work with, and automatically things start falling into place.
Absolutely.
But if he feels the other way around, he doesn't touch it. So you can see, for entrepreneurs or anyone, including myself and my dad, we just used hope as a fuel, not as a crutch.
That's awesome. That's awesome, and that's really good advice to use hope as fuel, not as a crutch. Because as entrepreneurs, if we're using anything as a crutch, then, I mean, when was the last time you saw anybody running on with their crutches? It doesn't work. Exactly. And as entrepreneurs, we have to be. We're running a marathon here, right? We're not just taking a little sprint. I mean, at times we have to, but we're running a marathon, and it's a long journey. So, to have that fuel, that's powerful. That's palpable, and I'm really glad you said that. So, I still want to go a little bit more into your history. So take us from that airport in Jordan. Take us from there, and how did you actually end up getting to New Zealand, and maybe talk about your college years if that falls in the same time zone.
Okay. Yep. So it was interesting because if you've watched the movie Argo, and if you remember that scene, and for those of you who haven't watched Argo, I won't ruin it for you, but there's an end scene in that movie. You guys have to watch that movie. It's a brilliant movie. But there's a scene at the end. Have you watched the movie, Ben? Have you watched Argo?
Unfortunately, I have not.
Okay, get your hands on the movie today. That's going to inspire the hell out of you, if anything. And let me know, send me a private message and let me know. And for all the listeners too, watch the movie. I promise you, this weekend when you watch that movie, you're going to cry, you're going to laugh, you're going to feel determined, and that's going to ignite you as an entrepreneur in some form or shape if you take the principles. But something happened at the end of that movie which happened very similar to us in the plane. It was interesting. I mean, it was funny at the time, but it was powerful because we got on the plane. And I remember I was like, we're all sitting in the plane's not taking off, everyone's waiting, we're still waiting to take off. And then, my sister, my elder sister was like nudging me and going, Sohan, close your eyes, we're going to pray. And I'm like, what do you mean we're going to pray? We're going to take off. She goes, just close your eyes and we're going to pray now, okay? And I'm like, looking up, trying to see what's going on. There's an 11-year-old kid trying to figure out when's this plane going to take off because I was excited about the movie. And back then, there was this massive screen that would kind of roll right down, and we all kind of watch a movie from our seats trying to look up like that. It was quite funny. We didn't have those individual ones. We did that, and then once it took off, it was crazy because it was everyone just strapped out of the seat belts, and everyone's hugging and. Being Indian, everybody took out their food and everyone's going, come on, let's celebrate. Indians love celebrating food. It's all about family and food, baby. So it was like happy and jumping on the plane and jazz. We get to India and it was interesting. It wasn't easy at all. I remember going with Dad to schools because we were right in the middle of semesters. So it was my sister and me. My eldest sister was in uni and she was fine. It was the middle one and myself. And we had to get admitted into schools, but it was ridiculous how many people would just not give us any admission without, asking for a donation of a certain amount, which was absolutely bizarre because we went with nothing. All the money that my dad had was he put it in properties. When you live in the Middle East, you can make some decent tax-free money. But that money that he had, he put it in a couple of properties, and he had to decide which one he's going to keep, which one we're going to live in. And the other one, unfortunately, couldn't rent it out or let it out. He had to just sell it. So he sold it, took the money, and started a business for himself, right? A little convenience store, like a 7-Eleven kind of thing. And because he wouldn't get a job at his age. But he had to be very careful with the money. And I'd see him door knocking and actually people being nice to him, but at the same time politely asking for a bribe, calling it a donation. And he refused to do that. Eventually, we managed to get into school, and we're going to one of them without the donation stuff. There was a school that was actually advertising to say all evacuees from Kuwait or anywhere in the Middle East, you please bring your kids to our school, and it was cool. And it was great. It all worked out really well because what they were teaching there is what we learned in Kuwait. And I finished school. It was interesting. Again, all my qualities came handy. But here's something interesting, Ben. When I started my schooling there, I was one of the most polished English-speaking kids in that classroom. Don't get me wrong, the rest of the kids spoke English too, but they didn't speak as well as I did. They had broken, and it's obvious because they were, when you're in a country which is quite ethnic and you're in a society around that, you'll tend to speak your local language. For me, English was it. The only other language I knew were the ones that the Indian languages I'd study in school, but not practice speaking at home because that's most times speak with my mom and dad and my sisters in English. Anyway, I remember the kids outcasted me. I didn't go through a crazy bullying stage, but I think when I look back at it, it was a form of bullying. It was a milder version of bullying because I was outcasted and it didn't feel good. Now, the only thing I had was myself, my family. So I had a support network because they loved me like crazy and I loved them. And that was my that was my hope of saying I have something to look forward to. And so I lived in a state of expectancy as a kid in school, right? The area the neighborhood that I lived in, all my neighbors had these kids the same age as me, and they'd want to play cricket. Here's the funny thing: I couldn't speak their local language, and all of them they would speak local because they would never went to an English-speaking school. They had English as a subject to learn, but they weren't speaking it fluently. Here I am in the exact opposite. So I was like the black sheep in the whole crowd, right? Literally speaking. I like hanging out with them, and then I couldn't understand. I'd do sign language, try to get a point across. It's like going to Vietnam. I don't know if you've ever been in places like it's like going to Vietnam and trying to talk to a local, and he doesn't understand you. You don't understand him. He's trying to hustle his watch and give it to you, and you're trying to go and bargain with him. And it's the same gig, except that I'm trying to get, I want to bat and play cricket, and these guys are like, no, you go and field, and I don't want to field, and I'm trying to do sign language with them and talk. They're trying to understand my English. I'm trying to understand them, but at the same time, they never treated me with respect because they felt, I was being a show-off, speaking English, coming from an international world and all of that jazz. But all I knew at that time was just to be nice to them. My mom always told me one thing: be nice to people and everyone will be nice to you. So I don't get it when people say to me, oh, don't be too nice. I don't get it. I don't know if you saw a post the other day. I saw that post. But living in a state of fear, to say don't be too nice is, I feel, ridiculous. It's bullshit. Excuse my language, right? As an entrepreneur, you just have to be a nice person. So I was being nice. And I guess that was a form of respect which helped us eventually to blend in. And I learned the language. Flexibility, hey, comes handy because I learned the language to speak. Now I can speak it fluently. I meet another person who speaks that language, I get along like crazy, right, with them. So that, as a kid, for me was handy. So again, you can see a repetition of these same qualities that have been playing a part of my life as I was living in. And then I got into, I went to university. I did my bachelor's in commerce. And I loved it. I loved it. I loved the crowd. I loved the people. Again, a lot of my confidence that came was from my social ability, my theatrical ability to crack jokes and be the clown, the entertainer in the friend circle. And at the same time, the guy who had the dream and the vision. And I'd get people laugh at me because I think of wanting to start a business. And I'd see some of these guys roll in with their beautiful, fancy cars. And, one thing I never did, maybe this is useful for me, that has also come handy till date, is I never looked at any of them going, yeah, you got it all, so you can afford to do that. I think that's something I never did. I never lived out of jealousy. And I see a lot of entrepreneurs would do that when they see a Maserati pass by or they'll see a Lamborghini pass by. How many people, ask yourself, this is a great way to check, how many times have we gone and knocked on the window while the car's waiting and we said, hey, really cool car, what do you do for a living? How'd you manage to get it? I never used to do it, but I know that by doing that, it helped me consciously to build the ability for where I am today. So when I'd see these guys with these cool bikes and cool cars, I actually would just say, so what did you do? I never said, oh, your dad must have paid for it, even though I know, well, the fact was their dad's paid for it, but I never asked them that question. So I never came from that space of lack. I came from a space of abundance. Do you know what I mean? And that, as a guy in university, helped me a lot because I'd get into fashion shows, I'd do choreographies, I would do competitions with dancing and group dances. And the one thing that always got me going was having to be able to be there for others. Whether it was helping a friend in trouble, whether it was getting a phone call, or not phone call. Back then we had these pagers and the buzzers. We didn't have mobile phones. I'd get a buzz, and someone would say, my scooter's broken down. Can you help us out? And I wouldn't know how to help them because I wouldn't have a scooter. So I tried to be resourceful. That's another one thing I learned as an entrepreneur. I would try and be resourceful. I'd go and find out, who do you know who's got a scooter? Who do you know who's got a scooter? And I did that with myself. If I had to catch up with a girlfriend of mine, I would be like, I don't have a vehicle. What am I going to do? I got to catch up with her. I've got like half an hour as a break between my lectures. What am I going to do? Oh, I'll just ask my friend who's got a scooter, and I'd borrow hers and go away, not knowing that I'd get in trouble later by her boyfriend. Who cares? I'd be resourceful, take it, move, solution done, and everyone's happy. Come back, no dramas. So that I kept doing that quite a bit, and then I graduated, and I came across a network marketing opportunity with Amway. I call it a Ramway now. It wasn't fun. I was selling these detergent solutions, their signature products back then, and I remember it was ridiculous. I was inviting my mom's friends over and doing a kiddie party and showing them the detergents, and it wasn't my fault, or it wasn't the business's fault, but I think the model was just not, the product line was not right for the society, for that kind of society. Because in India, I don't know if you know this, Ben, but most people have a maid to come and do the dishes. You don't have a dishwasher, the maid is your dishwasher. She'll come and do it for you, right? So now it may be slightly different, but I'm talking about 20 years ago. We couldn't afford to buy a detergent, like a liquid detergent bottle, and keep it there as concentrate and rely on your maid to use it, sparingly. She wouldn't. So the way we would do it as a way of living is we would mix it, dilute it with water, and leave that out there for her to use. Now that was too much of a pain for us to do if we had to buy those products of Amway. So a lot of people didn't choose to buy. When I say us, I'm talking about the Indian community. So this is my version. This is my story of bullshit that I made up then. Okay, the reality is Amway went ahead and they became very successful despite that. So you can see mindset has a big role to play. I limited myself and I said, I ain't going to do it. And then I had another opportunity, which was Herbalife. And I enjoyed that too. So that I enjoyed more because it had to do with wellness and fitness. But I really, really killed it. I nailed it. I borrowed money from my father. I invested it in the stock, made lots of money. But I didn't know how to keep that money. And so I ended up blowing it all up. I spent it all. And when it came to time for me to return the money to my father, he was like, where's the money? And I said, well, I'll give it to you. And he never believed in me from that moment on for that point, because he felt, hey, this business thing you're after, it doesn't work if you're not going to make any money. And I couldn't convince him of the fact that I did make the money, except that I blew it up on the, on the clubs and the travel and the fun and the girls and all that and friends. So I eventually said, okay, I'm going to prove to you that a job doesn't work. Because he said to me, go get a secure job. Get a job, be secure, and then once you have everything right, then you can think about doing business. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do this 9-to-5 thing. I ain't cut out for that. I'll show you. So I picked up a newspaper. I found a job of a call center in Mumbai, because we never lived in Mumbai at the time. We were in another city close to Mumbai. So I found this job in a call center, which was an international call center. I said, yeah, great, I'm going to apply for that and show you how it doesn't work. Got in there. I got sucked into the job world because I loved it. Ironically, I really loved it. It was fantastic. I was working with the Americans. I was doing midnight shifts. I enjoyed it because it was about accent. Again, theatrical variety. I had to learn the culture of America, learn different dialects. I could literally stop saying water and start saying water. I had to switch my accent, and I had to learn how to sound just like the Americans did in different terms, because I had to see how. So it was interesting. I started playing with that. Enjoyed it. And then I did well. It was in a debt recovery and collections for Capital One credit card collections. Enjoyed it. And then we moved from an American base, we moved into a British and English UK project. So now I had to stop saying water, and I had to learn how to say water. Do you know what I mean? I had to actually learn how to stop saying, speaking like an American. I had to learn how to talk like an English person. So it was quite difficult, but I had to pick it up. And then we did that. It was good fun. Sales, hustling. I was one of the top sales guys month after month. I loved the ideas of the rewards. I'd get little knickknacks, and I'd line them up on my table and shine and go, yeah, this is my motivation, my prize money. I'm going to keep going. And we continued with that. And then I met the love of my life back then. And then 3 years later, we got married. And we decided, okay, I wanted to move to Australia anyway. Like I said earlier in this conversation, I had a dream to go to Australia. She never wanted to go to Australia because she had some bad experiences. And so it was, either her or Australia. I made the obvious choice. I picked her. and we got married, and then we decided we were going to settle in Canada. She picked the neutral country. Didn't happen. 2006, my sister calls me and says, "You got to come for my first child's communion. Uncle Sohan's got to be in New Zealand. You're gonna love New Zealand." She lives there. It's beautiful. It's all you. And so that's how I ended up saying, we had a debate, my wife and I said, okay, I had a training company back then in Mumbai. I was a director of a company called Outreach Training Solutions. We provide training and coaching sessions for corporate companies, individuals, executives, salespeople, call centers, etc. So I said, if nothing works out in New Zealand, I'm coming back home and we're all good. And then we can figure out a plan for there. But things did work out when I went to New Zealand. 4 weeks later, I had nothing for 4 weeks. I attended the communion. I did all of that. We had a great party. 4 weeks later, I still didn't have a job. No one was willing to give me one because I didn't have a visa. And then the visa guy said, you got to get a job. Eventually, I got something 3 days or 4 days before I was supposed to fly out. It was powerful because when that happened, I remember I was dancing like crazy in the shower. It was insane. And I lived in New Zealand from there on, and I continued my journey. And unlike many immigrants, people ask me, this is another important thing for entrepreneurs. A lot of us go through this resilience piece, right? And we do it because we feel like we didn't fit in somewhere and we fit in a different mold. And I felt like I was the same for a lot of time, but I felt like I was suppressing myself from 2007 to 2012 until I attended a seminar which completely transformed my life in that 2.5 days, that I realized that I could go back and express myself freely one more time. And when I got myself back and away from that whole tall poppy syndrome that I was talking about, all of a sudden I realized. And the way I realized was when someone said you're over the top. The moment they said that to me, I was like, bam, I'm on the right track. That means I'm expressing myself freely and you can't handle it. That's what it's about. And so I kept living like that, and we kept doing it. Unfortunately, our marriage didn't work out, and we were together for a good 12 years. But it didn't work out, unfortunately, and we separated 2 years ago. And she went back to India. She lived in Mumbai, and she's a trainer there, and she's loving it. And I said, what am I going to do? I'm going to move forward with my mission, because that's something that I always had with me. And so I continued. And part of that mission, like I said to you, was this dream of 16 years of having to go to Australia, which was going to happen anyway. I was going to move to Melbourne, but I guess I ended up in Sydney. And when I did, it was hope again, because I had no bookings. I had nothing on me that I could go and live in a hotel. I made a decision to get out of New Zealand, to the point that I made a phone call to a friend of mine who was in Sydney at the time when I was boarding my flight from New Zealand, saying, can you do me a favor? Can you book me a hotel somewhere? And this was like 7 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the evening. And then he did that. And I got into Sydney at about 7:38 at night. And I got a text message on my messenger telling me this is the address. And I thought it was a hotel. I ended up going there, and I realized it was a backpacker. And I'll tell you what, I'm a clean freak. I'm all this guy about, neat and tidy. Sometimes I feel like I'm borderline OCD. But it's interesting. I get there and I'm going, man, I'm going to share a room with 4 people. And it was fascinating. And I've actually got photos and a journey which I'll be writing a book on. And it's going to be in there. But it was powerful, because I didn't want to sleep in that room. And I was going, no way. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to stay up all night. And I'll come back in the morning. So I went downstairs for a walk. And I walked up in the CBD of Sydney. And the first person I saw was this homeless guy who was nice, trying to snug himself into the wall in the corner. Kept walking up. I went to a cafe, picked up a coffee, and I was coming back, and I saw this lady in a wheelchair with a puppy, and she was a homeless lady, and she was in a wheelchair. And I said, this is crazy. This shouldn't be happening to anybody, right? But it still happens. But something hit me at that point, Ben. And that was the time I realized that gratitude was a big, big, big piece that I'd forgotten about for a bit. And as entrepreneurs, you got to have a rampage of gratitude if you can every single day, because it transforms your entire day and people around you. And that's what happened. I had this massive rampage of gratitude. Every single thing my eyes laid on, that moment on, dude, I was walking every single step with crazy gratitude. All of a sudden, that, as stupid as and ridiculous as it may sound, I walked into that backpacker feeling like I'm walking into a 7-star hotel lobby. Shit you not, that's exactly how I felt. And I got into my room, and I went and I slept on my bunk, and I was all good. From that day on, everything was okay. until I knew, again, I regained myself and I started using hope as my fuel, not as my crutch. And then I ended up being more of a state of expectancy. And 3 weeks or 4 weeks later was that I ended up finding my place back, and I found an apartment I loved, and I moved into the apartment where I am now, in a beautiful location. I found a client I wanted to work with. It was everything just started falling into place just the way it needed to. This is going from absolute scratch. And mind you, oh, by the way, I lost all my money. So I had no money. I borrowed 3,000 New Zealand dollars from a friend of mine, and I promised to pay him back in 6 months, which I ended up paying him back in 5.
Wow.
So who's got any excuses? Hit me up, because I'll tell you what. You ain't got no excuses. It's all here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, you said it at one point that that you really found a love for learning and developing. And it seems like personal development, but maybe you could talk a bit about how that's played into your entrepreneurial life, and why it's so important for entrepreneurs to continuously seek improvement.
I'll tell you what, my journey of actually learning the value of learning and development happened when I started working with businesses where I had to hustle, and the art of duplication was a big one. The moment I understood the value of the art of duplication, I realized that the art of duplication is basically picking up a blueprint of someone that's already proven and done it, and then you just need to follow it and make it your own as you go. And that, when I started teaching my people, aspiring entrepreneurs that would jump on my team and want to get coached, I started teaching them the blueprint. I'd show them the concept of how to duplicate and how to take a blueprint and apply it to their lives. The rest was easy. If they had Google back then, these guys would just be taking the concept. They'd be able to find different types of blueprints that they wanted, and they could use that and apply them to their paths or their journeys. But the interesting thing is they didn't have Google, so they started talking to me. They started talking to a few other leaders in our teams, and all we did was we started showing them which ones they could use, and then they would just pick the person and use them as their mentors and their blueprints, right? The other thing I did was also, going before that, when I was in the job situation, I would look at in the sales department, when these new guys would arrive in the organization, the first thing they would do is part of the induction or orientation is they would sit with me and they would see how I did it. Again, that was nothing but me laying out a blueprint, being me, setting an example, and being genuine about how I do my sales, and then showing them that these were the ways of doing it. I'll tell you what, I wasn't cut out to say, right, okay, so mate, did you see how I did step 1, step 2, step 3? I didn't do that. All I said was, I don't know how I do it, but what I'd like you to do is tell me what you got out of it, and then I'll see, because I might just end up learning something, because I don't, sometimes we don't know, most times we don't know what we don't know, so I'll pick it up. That's what helped me to understand the value of learning and developing ourselves. And developing ourselves is basically the shit that's between the ears. That's all it is. Everything else is tactical. So that for me was the big thing. My spirit was so big on my job. That's what got me engaged with people. That's what made people engage with me. And I started teaching this very easily to people around me. And when they did the same thing, they got similar results. When they didn't do that, they wouldn't get the results. So it was an obvious, it was an obvious fact. You could see the difference there. That being said, along the time in the journey, when I started working with a lot of people and building my business, I knew that I cannot go on without a coach. It's just being out of line. It's being out of integrity. We have to be able to have a mentor. We have to be able to have a coach. We cannot be our own coaches. Because I'll tell you what, you can stand up right now and try and kick yourself in the backside as hard as you want. As hard as you want. Two things might happen. A, you might either or not snap your knee when trying to kick as hard. Or B, you're not going to get hurt either way. Because it's not going to hurt you. But what you do need is someone else to come in. If someone else kicked you in the rear, that would hurt really bad. Now that's called accountability. Someone's got to hold your feet to the fire, and it ain't you. It wasn't me. So I knew from a learning and developing standpoint, the only way I'm going to know is by not knowing what I don't know. And someone's got to point that out. It's the blind spot. I saw someone posting something on Facebook the other day going, if you know that you have a blind spot, get in touch with me because I'm an expert in teaching how we can help you see the blind spot. But here's my question. If you don't know what you don't know, then how do you know what you don't know? So if you don't know you don't have a blind spot, how can you identify you have a blind spot? If you knew you have a blind spot, then then it wasn't a blind spot.
It's not a blind spot, right?
Correct. So then that means you don't need any development. But that's not true. Our lives, we're constantly growing because, like you said earlier, it's a journey. Entrepreneurs, this is not an event. This is a journey. And if we want to be on the top of our game, we have to have a coach and a mentor. There is no two ways about it. Usain Bolt, he's not constantly at his peak. He hits his peak and he drops. He hits his peak and he drops. He hits his peak and he drops. But those peaks and troughs, and if you look back at it from a macro perspective, the trend looks upward. Reason being that he has a coach that's constantly helping him to identify when he's just about to tip over from his peak, which we all do. The moment we reach a point of excitement and our peak, we're just about to tip over and start getting into the excuses world before we hit the blame world. And then we drop that project and we start something else. And then we do the same thing. We get excited. We reach that peak. Everything's going fantastic. And we're just about we tip over. We start making excuses. We procrastinate. We don't do it. And then eventually we start blaming we start blaming Trump. We start blaming society. We start blaming our neighbors, our moms, our dads, whoever it is. And then we go back into another project. And that's why a lot of us as entrepreneurs see that our spouses or family members will turn around, and I've been guilty of that too in the past. We'd be told, oh, here we go, he's starting something else again. She's starting something new. Here we go, she's going to do it again. They roll their eyes. It's only because you haven't had a coach good enough, or you haven't had a coach, period, to help you see that point where you're about to tip over from your peak and help you to be there. Now, if someone held you there, don't you reckon you can actually still stay there and just continue? And then when you're just about to tip, then someone holds you back up there, and again you continue, and then when you're just about to tip from your peak, again someone holds you accountable, picks you up, and you go. That's what coaching, learning, developing helps us entrepreneurs move forward with whatever we're trying to achieve. So that is such an important part of us as entrepreneurs, that we need to have that with us. Bring in a mentor, bring in a coach. They ain't expensive. There are so many people, you just put your hand out and you ask for help. They're there for us. But we as entrepreneurs believe that, they cost a lot of money. Who's going to pay attention to us? Why would they want to help me? I'm a nobody still, But that's called an imposter syndrome. And again, learning and development and having a coach or having the right mentor gets you to get out of your own way, which is that thought of, oh, I'm not good enough. And to actually be able to say, I'm enough. And then keep moving forward on that peak. So it's been a very important part of my life, to be honest, on this journey, and it'll continue to be. I've got a coach for a relationship. I've got a coach for my life, and I've got a coach for my business.
That's awesome.
The one I'm looking for now is a coach for health. And lucky, my partner is a health coach. So, hey, I might just have it in the family.
That's
right?
Awesome.
So that's important.
So I'm glad you talked about that. You brought up a lot of good points, especially even somebody as successful as Usain Bolt. He still needs a coach. He absolutely needs a coach, and nobody's too good for a coach. Nobody's beyond that. And in fact, the more successful people that you talk to, the more that they attribute a lot of their success to having coaches, to having mentors, right? You can't do it all on your own. Sometimes you need help, right? Now, that being said, it's not a good idea to take this on the flip side and say, oh, I don't have a coach, so I don't have to hold myself accountable for anything. That's absolutely not what we're saying. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is, look for a coach that can help you accelerate what you're already doing, that can help you bring up what you're already doing. If you're going downwards like this, and you're going on a downward spiral and you're just not doing it, a coach can only do so much, right?
Correct.
A coach can help you go from good to great. A coach can help you go from better to best. But if you're going on a downward spiral like that, and it's because of you, a coach can only do so much, right? So you brought up a lot of good points, but I just wanted to kind of clarify on that one thing.
Spot on. Absolutely right.
So Sohan, tell me before we keep going, because I want to talk about what you're doing now, and you said you had a few clients, you're your business partner, so I'm really interested. But one important part of personal development, in my opinion, is reading. And what books would you say are, and maybe give a top 3, top 5, what books would you say are the best for entrepreneurs?
Okay. The first one that I'll say is the Code of the Extraordinary Mind by Vishen Lakhiani. I love that book. I've been following the guy since he was building Mind Valley, and he's powerful. That book that he's culminated and created together is a book that you don't just read, but it actually encourages you to implement. And it goes back to your earlier point. Implementation is key. So the moment we implement, then we start seeing outcomes. And this book is one of those books that actually helps you do that. It's entertaining too, because he has an audio version. So I have both, and depends on what you are as an entrepreneur. When you're reading books, I think that's another thing you want to discover. Are you auditory? What model are you that you tend to relate to with the world, or the world with you? Are you auditory? Are you visual? Are you kinesthetic? Depending on which it is, you choose. But for me, I'm auditory and visual. So I've got the book that I read, but I also have the audible version of it. And so I keep listening to it. And the beauty of that book is that he has a portal, he has an app that every single person who buys the book and reads it can actually download the app and actually watch those videos, and it has a direct congruence or direct relationship to the book and the concepts or certain things he's spoken about in the book. That book, I just want to warn everyone, just like it did to me, was that it will disrupt your entire mindset, period. It's a disruptor, 1000%. Okay, it's going to shift the paradigm, and it's going to create a totally different landscape of your way of thinking, but it's powerful. Things that you can apply in there are so simple but extremely profound. And I guarantee you, every single person who reads that book, every single person who reads the book and applies it, whatever's in there, there's no way in hell that they'll disagree with me. That's the first one. The second one is the 10x Rule by Grant Cardone. A definite book that every single entrepreneur needs to read. Man, that guy talks about hustle. He is the word hustle. And in entrepreneurialism, we're about hustling and we're about grinding. That helps these are vehicles. These are like the grind and the hustle are like the two wheels of a bicycle. As long as we've got that bicycle, and that bicycle is the one that's actually our vehicle, which is a solution that we're helping our customers to come on the journey with. And it's trying to follow a certain path. And the 10x rule is exactly that. You get to understand that. So that's the way I look at it, and that's how I describe that book for myself. The third one, and this is not because I'm giving you in a top 3 order where the third one is the bottom. I'd actually flip it around. But the reality is the book of The Science of Getting Rich, that book needs to be studied, hands down. I've been studying that book for 5 years. See, here's one of the things that my coach taught me, and this could be useful for most people, or some are already doing it, but I found it very unusual at the time. Read the book from start to finish, and then read the book from finish to start. And then when you're done with that, then read paragraph by paragraph, all the way to the end. And then when you're done with that, then you read back only the specific book. Right? Then you read paragraph by paragraph from back to front. When you're done with that, you read line by line from front to back. And then when you're done with that, you read line by line from back to front, as far as The Science of Getting Rich is concerned. There is an amazing programming and transformation that takes place as soon as you start doing that. And I've been doing it for 5 years now. I have it on my audio, and I keep listening. It's part of my power hour ritual every day. I have to listen to it for a good 15 minutes. And it's amazing. The way it helps you be is powerful. And it's probably why I'm always with a smile on my face all the time. So that's for sure. These are the top three books that I feel every single person needs to have in their arsenal at any given time.
That's great, man. That's fantastic. So we talked a little bit about your past, and we got a little bit into what entrepreneurs need to think about, and some tips and tricks and just real good mindset stuff. But let's talk more about you. What are you doing right now as an entrepreneur? And where? So first, what are you doing right now, and then where do you see yourself going in a few years?
Yeah, it's a great question. So right now, I'm in the process of building a massive movement, and the movement's called Label, which stands for, it's an acronym. LABL is an acronym for Love and Be Loved. And the one thing that I know, and every single entrepreneur knows, that relationships are really, really important, whether they're professional or personal. But the relationships are so important for us to find that state of mind of being good and being in integrity and being able to find balance and being able to find fulfillment and real, life transforming compassion. And that's the movement that I'm really working on right now, because one of my visions is to be able to touch 1 million families in the next 10 years and impact their lives so that I can help them live a life of, an abundant amount of compassion, crazy amount, deep felt joy, not happiness, not just happiness. Happiness is okay because that's a surface. But when someone really feels joy within, it's incredible. Like, it's like this weight taken off people's shoulders and their chest. They can literally, they breathe, when they have that joy. So that's that. It's a very passionate path that I've taken. It's a movement that I'm building and help create a lot of love. People to be nice, just nice people, really great entrepreneurs that can be around the world. So that's the big movement that I'm working on. And along with that comes my coaching practice, because that sits on the back end of my coaching practice, which is to do with transforming and improving lives of people as far as relationships are concerned. So I specialize in creating prosperity for people, whether it's boosting their productivity in their workforce, or whether it's helping someone gain communication skills so that they can communicate better with themselves and people around them that matter the most, whether it's learning how to love their loved ones the best way they can possibly be, like being the 5-star or 7-star husband, boyfriend, girlfriend, 7-star grandson, 7-star father, 7-star wife, 7-star sister, or 7-star brother. Being that relationship, holder, being an example for that. So that's what I specialize in working with, and also everything else that comes with it, the emotions, the ability for people to want to learn how to deal with anxiety and why they trigger and how they can permanently eradicate them, even to the point where people have been termed ADD and ADHD, and the reality is that these are labels, and how people can actually find tacts of dealing with these without having to take medication necessarily, in safe ways and proven ways. These are things that I coach and I specialize in building that practice. So it's all riding along the same theme and the vision that I've got as an entrepreneur to create this massive platform, a big movement for people to come with. And one of the things that I will be doing in the near future is having to create a platform for entrepreneurs to jump on the bandwagon, to be able to build a similar thing and incorporate their own vision in this big vision too, so they can build it themselves and find fulfillment. And it could be objectively doing certain things, but actually from a value and beliefs standpoint, it completely fits into those individual entrepreneurs that would work with me, and it automatically fills in that big void in this movement.
That's awesome. That's really cool. So I always like to ask this question, and I started asking it recently because I feel like as entrepreneurs, we wear a lot of different hats. You're trying to lead this movement. You're a coach. You're an entrepreneur. You're a business owner. So if you had to describe yourself, as one big label, who are you?
I'm Mr. Cheerful.
Mr. Cheerful. That's awesome.
That's my big label. And I'll say that because the one thing that I know that I've always had with me is love. That's me. Like when people look in my eyes and I talk to people and I look in their eyes, the one thing I look for is constantly that, because that's what we don't have much of in this world. Too much skepticism and too much, pushing back, too much of doubt, and all that's creeping in so easily. But the one thing that I stand for and who I am is essentially that person who actually has a lot of cheer. Different terminologies there, Energizer Bunny if you want to call it, whatever you want to call it, but I'm Mr. Cheerful. That's who I am, and I bring that to people's lives and families. That's awesome. through the journey of helping them commercially or just spiritually.
Very cool. Very cool, man. So, I just have one more question for you. It's been a great interview. I really do appreciate your time, and I appreciate all the value that you have provided to everybody listening, and myself, of course.
Oh, you know what? You've been amazing. Your questions have just created this. You're the cause in this matter, and I just want to appreciate you for asking questions that are so important for entrepreneurs to want to know. You've articulated these questions so well that I wish I had someone asking these questions and I could listen to someone speak back then when I started off my journey in the beginning. But I can go back to listen to this interview just for your questionings. Do you know what I mean? Like I could sit back and listen to it and reflect on it again and learn again. So I got to just say kudos to you and thank you for putting this out, because we need more people like yourselves. Well, big time.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. So my last question for you is there anything about yourself that you think is an important part of who you are that I did not ask you about today? In other words, what did I miss?
I love that question. I really love that question. I think I want to say that I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. I've made heaps of mistakes in my life, and it humbles me to know that I'm not perfect. And I gave up on that idea of wanting to chase perfection. I gave up on that idea. Doesn't mean I don't pursue that. Sometimes I do. I notice that I do objectively. Like I'll try and get a graphic, for a Facebook ad. I'll try and focus on getting the details right. But that's not important. I catch myself at it, and I realize that it's progression over perfection, and imperfect action is what I need to take in my life, whether it's family or whether it's work. That's how it needs to be. And I feel, while I've made mistakes, like I've made mistakes in my relationship, my marriage in the past, that if I look now what I know, if I used them back then, I probably wouldn't have had a divorce. I probably wouldn't have had a separation. I wouldn't have had those, disheartening moments, because there's so much that I've learned now. So I've made so many mistakes along the way that I do offend people sometimes with my straight up nature. And I'm okay with that, because I still come from a space of a lot of love and genuineness. So if I've said anything on the show today that might have offended somebody, I apologize to them. But I just want to say I left it as real as I could, because that's how it is. Absolutely. And I accept that.
And this show is about getting to the heart of entrepreneurs and really trying to figure out who we are as people and learn a thing or two and have a little fun along the way. So I think that's great. So I really do appreciate it. Now, if anybody wanted to get in contact with you, how would they go about doing so?
Okay, they could. So I'm on social media right across the board. I mean, you can go to start off with. You can find me on Facebook, facebook.com/Sohan Gokarn. So it's my full name. You can find me on Twitter with the same handle, Sohan Gokarn. You can find me on Instagram with the same handle. I'm on YouTube. I've got a channel there as well. So if you just go and Google it or YouTube it, you'll find my channel. So I do a lot of videos and tips and inspiration and things like that for people. I have a podcast as well called Destination for Greatness, which is designed for aspiring entrepreneurs who are on that journey. It's for the person who's looking for that missing piece of the puzzle per se. So it's an opportunity for them to jump on there as well. Please have a listen. It's a brand new podcast. We're only about 12 episodes in, and it's about to get even more exciting. And look out for it, because you guys want to make sure that you're there when Ben is on it as well. So you want to listen to it and take lots of notes when he talks. But yeah, essentially there. And I've got a program that I built called coachwithsohan.com. It's based on getting focused and really getting down to the dirty stuff and the nitty gritty stuff and doing what it takes for an entrepreneur to succeed. So it's a powerful course. It's an online course available for anyone who wants to take it up. But yeah, just hit me up on Facebook and then we can actually build from there. I've got a book as well, which I'm happy to give to your listeners, Ben. It's a little mini ebook that I wrote last year, and I think the shorter it is, the simpler it is, the easier it gets. It's called Start With Your Why and Meditate Using Creative Visualization, because I'm a big believer in having to create purpose and being clear. So once the why is clear, then it makes everything else easier. The how and the when becomes part of it, and it's easier. So yeah, look me up on Facebook, and let's catch up from there.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I encourage everybody to reach out to Sohan. Real good guy. We've been chatting over the last couple of days, getting ready for the interview. So he's very accessible. Definitely reach out to him. And I just want to thank you again for your time and coming on the show, man. I really do appreciate it. And,
appreciate you.
To everybody listening, I do want to thank you. Y'all are the reason that we do this.
That's fine.
Project Egg is for entrepreneurs gathering for growth, and so hopefully you've taken something of value from this. Hopefully you have left this podcast, this show, a better person in some way.
Yeah.
And even if we can only reach out and help one person, it's still worth it. So I do want to thank you deeply from the bottom of my heart. I really do appreciate everything and all the support that y'all give. So this has been another Project Egg interview, and today we've been talking to Sohan Gokarn from Mumbai. Take care now.
Thanks a lot, bud. Thanks so much.